Україна вже досягла багато. Та зброя, яку ми виробляємо зараз, та зброя, яка реально впливає на ситуацію на фронті.
Dear viewers, today is April 28, 2026. In one of history's most sophisticated wars of attrition, we are witnessing a new phase, and perhaps a final turning point, specifically in Crimea. What unfolded last night in Crimea went far beyond a simple airstrike or routine harassment fire. It was a surgical strike operation, directly targeting the Kremlin's logistical and moral backbone. The massive flames rising from Saki Airfield are not only evidence of the destruction of Russian ammunition depots, but also the most concrete proof that Russia's infamous air shield over Crimea has been completely breached. In your opinion, if an army cannot protect its most strategic air bases and its most valuable assets in the region, the MiG-31 aircraft, how much longer can it sustain its military presence there? In the attacks it carried out throughout the night, Ukraine inflicted heavy damage not only on logistics centers and fuel depots, but also on the 3 remaining critical ships of the Black Sea Fleet and the MiG-31 aircraft, the backbone of its modern air power, which possess the capability to carry hypersonic missiles. Today, Saki is turned into a wasteland born from the ashes of Russia's air superiority, rather than a military base. This operation, conducted using data shared by the Ukrainian General Staff and coordinated by the legendary commander of the drone units, Robert Brovdy, proved one thing to the entire world and NATO planners. An invisible force, nearly impossible to detect, is on the ground, capable of simultaneously targeting Russian oil, personnel, and morale. I know you're curious about the revolutionary technological reason behind why Russian air defense systems remain so blind and why S-400 batteries are being destroyed one by one. In a moment, when I delve deeply into the topic of remotely updated robots, which has even left NATO in awe, the pieces of this puzzle will come together in your mind, and you will understand why wars are now won not just with bullets, but with code. Under the leadership of commanders like Brovdy, Ukraine views the battlefield not merely as a conflict zone, but as a massive data processing center. This approach paralyzes the numerically superior Russian army in terms of quality. Military historians and strategy experts have always noted that war sparks innovation, and that moments of crisis are the cradle of great breakthroughs. However, what we are witnessing on Ukrainian soil, in the muddy trenches of Donbas, is not merely an evolution, but a military mutation. Ukraine's new generation of combat robots has acquired a feature unprecedented in the history of warfare, one that has even astonished NATO observers. These machines, much like the smartphones in your pocket, are remotely updated by engineers thousands of kilometers away. This is proof that what is now on the battlefield is no longer just a pile of metal, but an army of living, learning artificial intelligence. Imagine this. A robot's failure on the battlefield is transmitted as experience to the entire army within minutes via a piece of code. These autonomous units are rendering the Russian army's static defense lines obsolete one by one. So how does this technical detail change the outcome of a war? And why is it so dangerous? Consider this. While the Russian military spends months trying to jam a robot's signal or sabotage its software on the battlefield, Ukrainian engineers sitting in an office in Kyiv can upload a new algorithm to the entire robot fleet with the press of a single button. A robot that was defenseless against signal jammers one morning can switch to fully autonomous target recognition mode by evening. Zelensky's goal of 50,000 ground robots for the army is no longer just propaganda. It is the reality of an assembly line quietly seizing Russian positions, one that never tires and never fears. These robots do more than just fire. They clear mines, transport supplies, and most importantly, shatter the morale of Russian soldiers with the terror of fighting an invisible enemy. How long can you hold out against an opponent that never tires, never goes hungry, and is constantly updated? To answer that question, you need to be not just a soldier, but a software expert. It is no coincidence that even Europe's military giants, such as Poland, are adopting Ukraine's drone and robot doctrine as their primary defense strategy. Drawing on Ukraine's experience, Poland has begun establishing its own unmanned aerial vehicle fleets and robotized brigades. Traditional heavy armored armies and cumbersome tank divisions cannot keep up with this digital pace. Europe has now realized this. The wars of the future will be won not by tanks, but by smart software. Ukraine is not only defending its own territory, but is actively shaping the military future of the entire continent. My request to you is to help these strategic analyses and the invisible data from the battlefield reach a wider audience. To help people understand this new world order, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts on the future of autonomous warfare in the comments. Your support safeguards the independence of the MrGEOPOL team and ensures the continuity of these in-depth investigations. Thank you. We'll continue to delve even deeper into our analysis. Now let's turn to the other side of the coin, into Moscow's world behind closed doors and the depths of Russian society. The Kremlin can no longer hide certain truths, even with its massive propaganda apparatus. NATO's latest comparative report shows that Russia's personnel losses in Ukraine have already far surpassed those of the Soviet Union's infamous 10-year defeat in Afghanistan, which brought down a superpower. This is not merely a statistical fact. It is the seismic waves of a sense of defeat permeating the very fabric of Russian society, carried by obituary notices reaching every home. Russia is on the verge of being unable to calculate not just a military victory, but even an honorable exit. The loss of tens of thousands of young people is not merely a demographic catastrophe, it is also an acid eroding the legitimacy of the Putin regime. The Washington Post's field research and secret surveys show that in the Russian public sphere, promises of victory have given way to deep uncertainty and a social despair stemming from the economy grinding to a halt. Even Igor Strelkov, one of the system's most radical defenders, who was personally on the ground in 2014, has called on the Russian people to accept this unpleasant truth, namely, that Russia is moving step by step toward military defeat. The hawks of yesteryear are now whispering about the rot within the system and the coordinates of the approaching storm. While the Kremlin has increased pressure to suppress these leaks, the stories told by soldiers returning from the front have now become urban legends. The Russian people have begun to see the dark void behind the glittering marches. This tsunami of despair within the people is the Kremlin's greatest fear. The new war model, announced by Chief of the General Staff Syrskyi in recent days, strikes at the very heart of Russia's moral collapse. Classic frontline battles and World War II-style tank assaults have given way to a siege that leaves the enemy gasping for breath, digitally blinds logistics, and keeps soldiers in a constant state of insecurity. In just the first 4 months of 2026, the Ukrainian army received and deployed twice as many drones as it did in all of last year. This logistical speed and production capacity are at a level that the Kremlin's cumbersome, corruption-ridden bureaucracy cannot comprehend or compete with. It is no longer about quantity, but speed and precision. Syrskyi's doctrine aims to technologically paralyze the enemy before killing them. The New York Times, one of the world's most respected publications, recently ran an extremely striking and controversial headline: "Meet the new leader of the free world." A strong geopolitical analysis suggests that this title now resides not in Washington, but in Kyiv, a city forged in the fiercest flames of war, where modern diplomacy is fused with military resolve and technology with resilience. Amid post-Trump uncertainties within NATO and Europe's indecision regarding its own security, is Zelensky's uncompromising and resolute stance filling a global leadership vacuum. This leadership shift is not merely political rhetoric, but is directly supported by practical results on the ground. The West now sees its own future in Zelensky's strategic acumen. The recent attacks in Crimea are the fruits of Ukraine's strategic patience. It was not just an airport that was struck. Russia's entire security illusion over the Black Sea has been shattered. Even the Russian Black Sea Fleet's retreat to open waters is not enough to save them. Ukraine's long-range kamikaze boats and aerial drones have transformed the Black Sea from a Russian lake into a death trap for the Kremlin. The damage sustained by MiG-31s on the runway demonstrates that even Russia's hypersonic weapons threat has no real-world counterpart on the battlefield. Defense lines no longer rely on physical walls, but on technological superiority, and Ukraine is raising that wall a little higher every day. The Black Sea has now become a logistical burden for Russia. The operations carried out by the Ukrainian armed forces against Russia's strategic positions in various regions over the past 48 hours demonstrate the high level of coordination. The panic reflected in Russian soldiers' radio communications proves they believe they are facing not just an army, but a ghost. Night operations, coupled with synchronized attacks by thermal camera-equipped drones and autonomous ground robots, have completely paralyzed the Russian units' defensive reflexes. Reports from Russian positions indicate not just a shortage of ammunition, but a command crisis. Russian generals are now unable to even tell their soldiers where to fire, because the enemy is everywhere and nowhere. As Robert Brovdy noted, the target is not just tanks. Ukrainian drones are systematically striking Russia's lifeline, oil refineries and energy infrastructure. The decline in Russia's oil revenues means not only a cut in the war budget, but also the cessation of bribes paid to the public. When economic collapse merges with military defeat, the resulting picture is a complete nightmare for the Kremlin. The smoke rising from oil refineries signals an approaching economic winter for the Russian people. Morale is sustained not only by victory, but also by bread, and Russia now faces the risk of losing both. The Ukraine strategy aims to finish Russia off both on the battlefield and in the bank accounts. Special training sessions on Ukraine's use of robotics and drones are being held at NATO headquarters today. According to statements by the Secretary General and military delegations, Ukraine's military structure is setting the future NATO standards right on the battlefield. Comparisons to Russia's losses in Afghanistan are not seen as a measure of success by NATO staff, but rather as proof of how outdated Russia's military doctrine has become. Ukraine has managed to establish a defense industry that surpasses NATO's technology even before joining NATO. This is an unprecedented event in history. A country is transforming into a defense technology exporter while at war. The central question echoing through NATO headquarters is this: how will Ukraine's autonomous war revolution reshape the alliance's Article 5 doctrine? Military planners in Brussels are openly stating that the unique experience Ukraine has gained has now rendered classic NATO defense manuals obsolete. Defense is no longer provided solely by expensive air defense systems or heavy armored divisions. It is now delivered by cheap, expendable drone swarms synchronized with artificial intelligence. Poland's move to establish an unmanned aerial vehicle fleet is, in fact, less a matter of choice and more an official admission that there is no alternative to the Ukrainian model for protecting NATO's eastern flank. Ukraine is serving as a laboratory to update the alliance's military intelligence even before becoming a member. This situation is nullifying Russia's strategic depth not only on the battlefield, but also in global security balances. If Kyiv fully integrates this technological pace with NATO's industrial power, the Kremlin will have no room left for military maneuver. This is not merely a frontline victory, but a new defense renaissance. We must ask this critical question: how much further can Russia go to cover up these deepening sounds of defeat and its economic collapse within its own borders? Will the unpleasant truth, warned of by Igor Strelkov, ignite the fuse of an internal reckoning within Russia? History shows us that military defeats in Russia typically lead to radical political changes. What is being whispered in the corridors of the Kremlin today is not how to win the war, but how to keep the system afloat. The year 2026 will go down in history not just as a year of war for Russia, but as a test of survival. Dear viewers, when the smoke over Crimea clears and the wreckage of those MiG-31s is cleared away, we will find before us not just a military victory, but a completely transformed world reality. We at MrGEOPOL will continue to track this strategic transformation in the deepest detail. Do you think the fall of Crimea and this technological robot army will result in the Kremlin's complete withdrawal, or is a larger regional storm looming on the horizon? In this equation, where Russia's only remaining asset besides its nuclear card is time, will it be the West's support or Ukraine's engineering ingenuity that ends the war? The flames in Crimea's ammunition depots herald the dawn of a new world. Don't forget to share your thoughts in the comments. Stay informed and strategic.